Hello. In this video, I'm going to go through the necessary steps to program not only for the teacher dashboard, but also for the student side of things to provide students with feedback. For examples that are like this one, we're going to actually do this same example 3 different times in sort of 3 different ways of providing student feedback. So let's get right to putting in the check information for the teacher dashboard. First of all, we want to mark the image as read-only true so that the computer doesn't look there for correctness, that it just assumes that that's correct. And then over here in the table, we're going to need to mark cell 1, 2 as correct when it has an answer of 4. So we'll do check equals this dot cell numeric value of 1, 2 equals 4. And then we have to do the other cells as well. So the cell numeric value of 2, 2 is going to be 3 more than that, which is 7. And this cell numeric value of 3, 2 will be an additional 3, which is 10. And I think I went up to 5. So it'll be 13, and 5, 2 is going to be 16. I believe that takes care of it for the table. So we're going to set that to the correct sync. And the teacher side of things should be all set. So let's test that part out first. We can go in and say that this is 4, 7, 10, 13, and 16, and we're expecting to see the check mark up here in the preview for the teacher dashboard, and we get that. So our correctness on the teacher side of things, done. I'm going to duplicate this 2 more times so that we have 3 copies of it, and then we'll go through each of the different ways to provide feedback to students. So right here, we can duplicate screen. And that takes the CL that we've put in along with it. So we'll go back to the first one. And the first way that we're going to give students feedback is, what if they fill out the entire table, and then we want to tell them if the entire table all together is correct. So for that, we would need a button, an action button, which I've just added down here. And let's call it BPN, meaning button. And this is slide 1, so button 1, table 1. I could say directions 1 and image 1. You don't have to necessarily label all of those, but some of them we will need, like the button. And right now the button says try it. So maybe we want to say check my work. So that when we look at the button, it says check my work. And then in order to provide the students with feedback, we're going to now need a note, another note separate from the directions note. And here it is, and I'll call this feedback. So this is where we're going to say, like, if the student has the entire table correct, or the table needs fixing at least in 1 cell or more. All right, so let's go into this feedback, and we're going to need to reference both the table and the button. And I haven't done this on too many of my videos so far, but I'm going to start showing it more and more frequently. That what I really like to do, especially if I'm copying and pasting and using the code more than once, is to set up a variable called table, just generic, and then I name it table, and then whatever the table number is, in this case, table 1. And that helps so that if I'm on this slide with table 1, and then I want the same exact CL on the next slide, I just copy it. Even if the whole structure of the page looks different, I go into the CL for the table and I paste it, and then that one's probably table 2, so then I just change table 2, the table 1 to table 2, and all my CL works. So it can really be a huge time saver there. The other thing that we're going to be using is the button. So button That's my abbreviation for button, and we named it button 1. And then sometimes you might need to do like graph equals graph 1 or other components as well. But that should do it for us here. And so one thing that buttons don't have is the word submitted. Math inputs have submitted as text that you can use. Buttons have like press count, and they have time since press, but they don't have something called submitted. So we're going to use the time since press, but we're going to make our own thing called submitted just to make it faster for writing code pretty soon. Submitted, or whatever word you want to use. It doesn't have to be that. This, again, is a variable, so you're making up what word we're going to use. And we're going to say that the student has submitted it if the button, that the time since they've pressed the button is anywhere that is greater than 0, because then they've hit the button. But we probably want it to end at some point. So I usually go with like around 3 seconds, depending on what we're doing, but I think that should be good here. So the button again, time since press, and we're gonna say less than 3 seconds. Or we could say less than and equal to 3 seconds, whatever. It's very close to each other, but either way. So that'll help us with saying if the button's been pressed, basically, within this certain amount of time, then we want the feedback to show. And then we should say what we're going to check. So we're going to check, and we're going to check the exact same conditions that we already set up. So let me just go back to that for 1 second. They were back here in table 1. We already said what's going to make this correct. So we don't have to write all of this again. We don't have to copy and paste all of this again. We should just take it straight from here, and it's called check. So even though over here in feedback, I'm calling it check again, that doesn't matter. We just have to say where the other check is coming from. So the check is coming from the table, and it's the script, and it's called check. And see how some of that auto-populates as soon as I hit the table dot, and then it populates script as one of the options. So you should see it in there as you're checking. And then we can go through and, sorry, I just want to fix this. I just like to have it nice and clean. And we can say what we want to have happen. So this, again, if I exit out, this is the feedback. This is a note. So we want to write a message to students. So anytime that we're writing a message, we're going to use the content sync. And I'm going to set up the content sync with the word when this happens, blah, 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 when this happens, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to use when submitted. And again, that's our definition of submitted. When it's been submitted and it passes the check, then I want to say something like, great job, or this is correct, or whatever we want to use. Let's say correct. But when it's submitted and we're not writing it's past the check, it's just been submitted, then we want to say something like try again. And that message we could probably make a little bit more clear to the student. So I'll leave it like that for now, but I'll show you what I mean by that. And then we can say otherwise we want nothing. And that's because they haven't even submitted it yet. So we just don't want a message showing up like you got it wrong if they haven't even typed in their stuff yet. So let's try that one out. Putting in mostly correct answers, we're going to have 4, 7, 10, 13, and then it's supposed to be 16, so let's just say 15. And you can see it's wrong on the teacher dashboard. Check my work. It says try again. That can feel pretty overwhelming, I think, because I don't know if it's all the things or one thing, or I'm totally off track, or I've got some of it right. So it can be a little bit defeatist. If I go back into the CL, I could add a little bit more just to kind of help students understand that it could be very little. If I type in 15 again, now my message is try again, one or more cells in the table need to be fixed. So at least that way it's saying like it's not necessarily everything, but they do have to debug and figure it out themselves. And hopefully at that point they would figure out that this needs to be 16 and that they would get the correct answer. You can put icons in here as well. I often do just to kind of draw attention to the students' answers. But that's it for this video, and then I'll go over the next two as well in another video.